Good afternoon. We're going to call this meeting to order. We're here for Public Works, May 28th, 2024. We're going to start off with a roll call and determination of quorum.
Roberts. Here. Pettigrew.
Here.
Lehman.
Here.
Ham.
Here.
Roseland.
Here.
A quorum is present.
Next up is the adoption of the agenda. Motion by Roseland, second by Roberts. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Open up general public comment. Seeing no public commenters today, I'm going to go ahead and close that. Consent items 1 through 9, going to open and close public comment for those as well. And today we're going to ask Mr. Tech to go through the items for us, and then we'll make motions as needed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll give a brief description on these items, and if you have any questions, don't hesitate to stop and we can discuss further. Item number 2 on the agenda is a change order on our landfill cells 15 liner and leachate collection project. I want to showcase this item by saying that our project engineer, along with the contractor, came up with a solution that'll actually save the city about $150,000. So this $56,000 increase will negate a future project which would cost approximately $200,000. So a lot of credit to John Leahy, who's sitting in the audience today, as well as the contractor Dakota Ready Mix that we hired that came up with this solution. Item number 3, 4, and 5 are final change orders for existing projects that have buttoned up. Item number 3 is for televising. As you can see, there's an increase of about $36,000 for televising our sewer system. Ahead of televising, roots have to be cut out of the sewer system, and there were more roots in our sewer system where they televised than were anticipated. That's the justification for that increase. And then items 4 and 5 are just minor decreases rather on items that looks like paving related. Item number 6 is a joint power maintenance agreement with the DOT that are currently doing some it's roadway safety improvements, and it's a high friction course chip seal that they're putting on various locations in town here. It's a 90-10 grant, so basically the DOT is paying 90% of the cost. The city's responsible for 10% of the cost, and it actually has dual benefit. So the high friction course surface treatment provides better skid resistance in areas that have been identified as accident prone, if you will, and then also it's a treatment to the pavement to also make the pavement last longer. Item number 7 is a purchase of a compact roller, and this item is for our street department. They utilize it in their patching. It is to replace a roller, I believe, from 2005 that is currently only works part of the time and only in one direction instead of both directions, so it's time for that to be upgraded and replaced. That item will be surplused. Item number 8 is the purchase of a lift truck. Once again, back to the DOT, the city is responsible for operating and maintaining all of these big street lights as well as traffic signals throughout town. We've been doing that for a number of years. This truck purchase and lift purchase is to replace a unit, I believe, from 2008 that has been mechanically broken a number of times, and it's time to replace and upgrade that. And then finally, item number 9 is a construction fee resolution. This is per city policy. The city reconstructed a portion of Deadwood Avenue a couple years ago and extended sanitary sewer. We recoup our costs by implementing these construction fee resolutions. And with that, I'll stand by for any question.
Thank you, Mr. Tech. Mr. Pettigrew, you're in the queue.
Thank you. Dale, thanks for that explanation on the vehicles. Sitting up here on the dais, it seems like we buy a lot of equipment, and we just don't know all the answers, why, how come, and so that satisfies my questions on if things aren't working, we want people safe, we got to get work done, so I appreciate your detailed explanation.
Thank you, Mr. Pettigrew. Mr. Ham?
Yeah, thank you, Dale, for the description there. As the 2008 model, I was just curious, is that something that do we sell that to an outside entity?
Typically, what we'll do is we'll ask if any other city departments want to use it. If they've got a basic need for something that they may need 5 times a year to lift them up, we let them know that it's a problem. It's not a high-functioning vehicle at the time. So we offer it up to other city departments first, and then we surplus it and sell it. We have a couple of ways of doing that. We have contracts with a place called Iron Planet, so they're resellers of equipment that have a huge national presence online, or we'll just put it in the city auction.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ham. Thank you, Mr. Tix. Seeing nobody else in queue, I would entertain a motion. Motion to approve by Roberts, second by Ham. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion passes. Non-consent items, we're going to open and close public comment period. We have item 10, presentation update on airport construction by Mead and Hunts. Senior Aviation Advisor Tom Schauer and Airport ED Patrick Dame.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. I'll try and be as efficient and informative as possible with this presentation. I'll start off, and then Tom Schauer will bring in the end of the presentation here. So just to get going here, part of what our issue is with the airport here, we are geographically isolated, which is good for us and good for the airport. With Dickinson 3 hours to the north, we've got Sioux Falls 4.5 hours to the east, Bismarck, essentially, and we're 400 miles from the Denver area. So we do have a great location, being that we can bring a lot of the passengers to us that are going to fly out. We tend to be their biggest option for that. As a result of that, also, in the state, the 2 major airports, us and Sioux Falls, serve 94% of the total air service in the state of South Dakota, and that continues to grow. We do serve parts of Montana and Wyoming down into Nebraska and basically halfway across South Dakota. So passenger enplanements, we did hit a record in 2023 with 352,000 passengers. So far in 2024, we are up 24%, and we're on pace for another record year. It's very feasible that we're going to hit close to 400,000 passenger enplanements. We did just, in our current capacity report that I received this morning, June's seats are up 24.3%, July's up 22.8%, and August is up 33.8%. So we could see upwards of a 50,000 passenger increase just this year alone. Based on that, the current airlines that we have serving us today are Allegiant, American, Delta, United, and Sun Country. Sun Country will come back this month here and start up service, nonstop destinations. We've got 11 nonstop destinations, with 4 of them seasonally. This changes from year to year. We've had upwards of as high as 24 nonstop destinations coming into here at any one time, but typically 11 is close to the average. I passed out for you an economic impact portfolio or trifold there. You can look at that at your leisure. The economic impact study that we had completed last year, which was based on about 330,000 passenger enplanements. We've got basically a total economic impact of $455 million for the year. Tax revenue to Pennington County at $2.2 million, in the state of South Dakota of $15.5 million. 52% of the passengers coming for leisure and business travel. And you can kind of see the economic model that was set up by the consultant based on that and the employment numbers associated with the airport. Just looking at the growth, you can kind of see on the left, is a passenger growth from 2013, and then the forecast going forward. Obviously, the COVID dip in there, we did recover rather quickly, more quickly than most airports. And based on the forecast and what we're seeing in projected seats forward, you can see there's a strong likelihood in 2024 we'll jump to that 400, and then we'll carry on the path that was projected by the FAA pre-COVID, and that's what's in our master plan today. So basically 40% increase in passenger growth from 2014 to 2023. 2021 passengers return to normal from the pandemic. In 2024, employment's so far up 23.7% through April. You can see that being the red line. One of the things that really drive our business is you're only as good as your peak in there in terms of the function of the airline terminal. So when you look at, we peak out at 50,000 passengers is our highest month ever. You can see in the red line there indicating where we're at so far, and that we're trending above last year's numbers, and I think that's going to continue through the summer. Basically at 50,000, when we did hit that, we really struggled to be able to process passengers through the airline terminal. When you start to look at and comparing that to a full year, that'd be about the equivalent of running roughly 700,000 to 800,000 passengers for the year if you ran it every month. So based on the airline trends, we do attend a lot of air service conferences. We just returned from one last week. We've been meeting with carriers on a regular basis, Alaska, Breeze, Frontier, Avelo, Southwest, and others being our most recent meetings. They really do view us favorably on that. But one of the bigger changes that we're seeing is the increase in aircraft size. We're seeing a lot more Airbus aircraft size and Boeing 737s versus the previous regional jet aircraft that airline terminal and the hold room was designed for, being 50 to 76 seat aircraft and up to the DC-9 back in the earlier days. So we have done some infill development to create hold rooms at Gate 1 and Gate 2, but those hold rooms are primarily for smaller aircraft. So based on that, we are seeing some capacity-related issues within the hold room during the summer months. So I mentioned, kind of peak day, peak hour are some of the things that you measure the ability of the airline terminal to be able to handle passenger traffic. Currently, where we're at today, actually, and the numbers on the left are a little bit dated. They're back from our capacity report in 2021. Our peak hour was 394. So when you start to look at, whether it's building the church for Christmas or, what have you in terms of comparisons, when we're running through the summer months, we are peaking out the checkpoint right now at 394 passengers trying to get through in an hour. So if they're not able to process, if they don't have enough lanes and they're not able to process people will miss their flights or the flights will be delayed. As you look towards the right side of the screen, the graph over there shows 2030 and the increase in passengers up to 752 passengers in an hour. So based on our current checkpoint lanes, it's too narrow to be able to process that number of people. So we do see much longer lines in the August time period. You'll also see, based on that, as you see peaking in there, what happens during the day, because we have times when the terminal is empty and we have times when the terminal is full. The airlines, that really lines up with how the airlines fly. They want to get to their hubs. So everybody wants to be in at the same time and they want to be out at the same time to be able to get people to where they want to go. So it's not like we can tell the airlines when we've got time available. They come when they want to fly. So if we don't have a slot available for them to be able to get in for gate space, chances are they're not coming. Part of the issues that we've been dealing with in the back of house, you can see the sawtooth design of the ticket counters and then each of the airline offices in the exhibit on the right. We have a very confined space. That's the back of house has never been touched since the terminal was originally constructed in the 80s. So it's a very manual process for people who are dealing with the bags. Also, the sawtooth ticket counter design doesn't give us a lot of flexibility with being able to expand the number of ticket counters used during a peak time. So you'll end up with times where you get long lines like you see in the picture down below. So these are the things that we're trying to address. Here in the back of house, you can see there's just a linear bag belt. We have three screening equipment behind the to each three of the 5 ticket counters. So with that, they can only screen bags in those locations. They were put in post 9/11. Then they send them to the back. If no one's in the back to be able to take them off, it stops the baggage screening process up front. Where airports similar in size and even smaller than us, like Bismarck and Minot, have carousels in the back that allow metering of bags to be able to spit out on a much bigger carousel to be able to keep the process going. The picture on the left is the one from Bismarck. Fargo today is in the process. They're actually going to generation 2 of their carousel system currently. So again, you can see the existing on the left, and you can see the proposed, which is currently under construction. We've got the first phase of Project 1 under construction. We've made some changes to this. We were initially going to build out Gate 1, which was going to house a mechanical room. Due to the cost of the project, we've canceled the build out of Gate 1, and we've pulled that mechanical room into the space behind where the carousels appear. With that, we had to realign to more of a mini baggage screening system, which you see between the ticket counters and the back of house space that's there. So this does provide 2 carousels that the airlines are able to pull up with their bag carts and be able to draw bags directly off a carousel. Plus, it aligns the ticket counters, kind of like you'd see in most other airports. And that'll give us more flexibility for them to utilize the amount of ticket counters they need based on the number of passengers they have. And it puts a small addition off over on this side to the ticket counter area. On the second floor, we had to address the slope that was in the TSA checkpoint area. There's 18-inch difference between the gate area and what we consider the head house or the front of house area. So we were supposed to get new TSA equipment a couple of years ago. When they saw the slope there, the new equipment won't tolerate the slope. So we did not get that equipment, and it was sent somewhere else. Based on that, we looked at the ability to expand that space, and we couldn't expand it big enough to meet the future needs. So we designed a second-story addition on top of the existing, or the future bag makeup area. To allow 4 or 5 checkpoint lanes, and that'll give us the ability to expand into the future and meet the future 2030 demand. It's just a zoomed in version of it. We've also cut this space down because Project 3 is something that we're considering eliminating due to cost, which would replace the admin offices. Currently, the admin offices reside in this area here. We were going to completely eliminate those and move them over to the west side of the head house. Under this alternative plan, we're going to leave a portion of our offices and just alter the access to be able to get into the checkpoint until such time we decide to do Project 3. Just a rendering of the gate and hold room area. Talking about Project 3, you can see the existing area right here in red shows what's there, and then the addition of additional carousel and then new space for the car rental agencies. The car rentals is currently our second largest business on the airport, and during the summer months we do get quite congested in that. That was part of the 2012 addition, but really should have been, to meet future demand, needs to be expanded. So this shows again that expansion. It also shows the area where the new admin section and boardroom were to be relocated if this portion of the project gets built in the future. just a rendering of that. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Tom and have him kind of talk through some of the project-related details.
Good afternoon. My name is Tom Schauer. I'm with Mead and Hunt. Just a little bit of my background, so if I make some statements, you kind of know where I'm coming from. Prior to working in the consulting field, if you've been in aviation long enough, I used to be the FAA's Airports District Office Manager for North and South Dakota. So I worked for the FAA for about 24 years, doing airport development, things like that, prior to coming as a consultant. So I go through some of these as we look at how do we help a community such as Rapid City to undertake a project of this magnitude. You know, I'm a huge believer, and I know Patrick and his team and leadership in Rapid City is daylight everything, get the information out there, try to spend as much time letting people know what's needed, why it's needed, making sure the project is well justified. We do that by going out and meeting such as this. We meet with the legislators at a state level. We meet with legislators at the federal level as well. We meet with the FAA, State Aeronautics. We spend a lot of time briefing them on the needs of the project, making sure if there's information they need. So in short, when we look at the projects like this, this is an ongoing process that we will continue to do to help garner and maintain support for a project such as yours. And we'll get into some of the complications as we go through this, because the FAA process is not always the most easy. So keeping people educated on what's going on is a huge part of it. So as we go through that, that's one of the big things in our plan forward, is to keep looking at ways to educate people, keep looking at ways to maximize federal and state support for funding, help make sure the local, state, and federal people understand the project needs, and then find ways to be flexible to react to the cost of projects that are going up rapidly. Also looking at any ways we can minimize, like Patrick talked about, we reduce some parts of the terminal, making sure that it didn't drastically reduce any operational element of it, but maybe have a small flexibility, diminishing an ability to react to certain things, but it'll still position you for the long-term viability of your airport. So those are things we look at in our plan forward and will continue to do. Some of the things that we've had with Project One, just a little recap where some of you may not be aware of, is the overall terminal is planned in 3 projects. One was the ticketing, baggage area, and the checkpoint. Project 2 is the concourse, where you actually are through security and you're sitting in hold rooms and things like that. Project 3 was the rental cars and the administrative offices. Right now, we're currently underway on the building shell. Project costs came in significantly higher for a multitude of reasons, but for the most part, we reacted to that with the leadership of the airport. We have about ballpark $47 million left to be work to be done to finalize Project One. So as we look at that, we kind of broke them down into different pieces, the finishing off of the checkpoint, finishing off some of the office spaces and things like that. As we go through this, we looked at what funding can we make available. We've already been announced for $20 million congressionally directed spending. So we thank and have thanked your congressional delegates at the DC level who've worked collaboratively with the Rapid City Board and management team to get that. In addition to that, we're working with the state of South Dakota, who just recently funded about $10 million to put specifically for terminal projects in the state of South Dakota. A lot of that was done through the efforts of Patrick Dame out of your community and Dan Letlier out of Sioux Falls. Those two did a great job of educating the state leadership on the importance of projects like that and managed to garner $10 million worth of funding for terminal development. We have on there an estimated $5 million. It could be higher, could be lower. We're working through those issues right now. The state just literally in the last week announced what the rules are for that funding. And some of the big things the state wants is to make sure that any airport receiving state funding is putting a large portion of their federal funds that they're getting towards that project. In addition to that, one of the requirements is the state or the local funding needs to be also part of that package. The state is looking for that 3-tier funding where you have local, state, and federal. The state, I believe the way their rules are set right now for their funding, they would look at what's not covered federally and be willing to split that at a maximum 60% state, 40% local. So quite a bit of local still needs to be part of these projects, and that's one of the things we'll talk about a little bit in the next step as well. Looking at the remainder of Project 1, the airport will also be receiving federal entitlements of approximately about $11 million in the next in 2024, 2025, leaving a local share of $11.8 million. So to finalize that, that's what the airport and the community are looking at to finish Project 1, which is the baggage, checkpoint, and ticketing. When you look at projects like this, one of the things, having done this for a long time, people look at this process and go, this makes no sense. You know, if you're a business, if you're going to do a major development, you set up your funding, you put it all together, and you go, okay, we have the money to do the project, let's go forward. What sometimes the public doesn't understand is we look at these as the federal government, the state government, and local governments look at their budgets on a yearly basis. So one of the things the FAA will often ask us is, give us your funding plan. And I kindly remind them, well, let me call the largest funding agency and ask them what their funding plan is for our airport for the next 3 years, and we'll make ours contingent on their response, which we all get a little laugh because the FAA is the largest funding agency that directly funds terminals. And so as we go through that, that's one of the challenges. The FAA won't make commitments longer than 1 year long. In addition to that, there's a variety of different funding types the FAA uses. Not sure how they got this way, but all of them have relatively different rules and guidelines for how we utilize them. So as we look at it, how much you have to pay locally varies by the type of funding. Some things are not eligible. So when you walk through a terminal, right now, most of the funding that you receive, if you can't walk there as a public, it's not federally eligible. So when you look at, Patrick was talking about the back of house where you're doing all the baggage cares and all that, you just can't walk there as a public. All that area is ineligible. So those are things that go under the local share. Now, there's been some different funding that have allowed a little bit of expansion in there. We end up working very complex financial plans that utilize different types of funding for different types of elements. At the end of the day, though, it is one of those that is a huge demand on the local community because of these ineligible areas. So that's one of the things. In addition, when you do funding with federal government, you have things like the Davis-Bacon Act that requires certain wage rates. We have the Buy American condition. We have the Buy America, Build America condition that was added. All of these are things that were done with the best intentions in mind, but a lot of times they drive project costs notably up. So those are things we're also dealing as we go through that. Like I said, as we're also working with the state government, trying to help them understand the importance of aviation. This is one of the things we're seeing across the country, is states and local communities are having to support more and more of the airport development. The airport improvement program has not seen an increase in funding. With the exception of this year, they went from roughly $3.2 billion to $4 billion, but they also added a bunch of other requirements in that. So there hasn't been an increase for like 20 years. And we're seeing that because project costs have gone up roughly 300% to 400%. So those are some of the challenges we're facing as we go through this process. We are working with Patrick and his team. We see a path forward to get through Project 1. We'll do our best to keep grinding this forward because we know with the growth that Patrick talked about early in the process, your airport serves a vital role to Rapid City, Western South Dakota, the tourist community, and we think it's a huge element that needs to be addressed. So anything we can do to help, let us know. Having said that, I think we just have a little picture of what's going on to date from one of the cameras out on site. And I think we open it up for questions.
Thank you, gentlemen. Do any of my colleagues have any questions? Mr. Pettigrew.
Patrick or Tom, what's the, if funding isn't found, I mean, what's going to happen at the airport? What are we going to get to a maximum level where we can't accept any more enplanements, no more airplanes, and we're just going to stop? Or what's the worst case scenario here without additional funding?
Mr. Chair, Rod, thank you for the question on that. So right now, if you look at, you heard me mention early on that 50,000 threshold is kind of, in a month, is getting to be the top of what's there. Well, that's coming at the time when we need people coming in. But right now, our ability to process those people gets pretty capped at 50,000. So that gives us the ability to grow in the times of the season when people aren't coming here, not so much in that time of the year. Now, one of the things that we are seeing, because the airplanes are bigger and you have more people at one time, maybe less airplanes there, we've had some relief on the gate-related expansion needs for right now. As we add more carriers to it, we're going to need more gates to be able to get more carriers. And one of the things that I'd mention is we're working to build the processing plant of the airport right now. The expansion that we're doing today, Project One, is purely a processing plant. It's going to process bags to get on the airplane and people to get screened to get on the airplane, to be able to allow for an expansion in the future, because we are getting to the top of the ability for 7 gates for the processing plant to be able to handle those 7 gates. So Project One is about getting ready for Project Two, but there's no additional revenue to the airport in Project One. So it's a very large cost associated with trying to get through Project One in an effort to be able to have the processing capacity to build Project Two. Project Two, which is a gate area expansion, is the first time we actually expand the capabilities of the airline terminal to be able to have more passengers, more flights, more routes, and more revenue. We look at, there's just not a lot of revenue that comes into, it's like upgrading your furnace at your house. Doesn't add a lot of value. You need a good furnace. So we need a good processing plant, and that's what we're dealing with right now to be able to do that. It actually has reduced the capacity of the gates because we went from 9 parking places down to 8 throughout this process. So until we actually add on to the gate area, we are at a reduced capacity for our ability to park and turn aircraft at the airport today.
One of the things, if I may add on to that, is one of the things that airlines do very well, and we see in the hotel industry as well, is where you see this dynamic pricing. And as your supply stays static, your demand's going to continue to grow. You're going to see those ticket prices creep up on a yearly basis until you can accommodate and bring more competition into the market. And we see that all across the board. And that's one of the things we see even with pilot shortages or aircraft shortages or things like that we've seen over the last several years. So it's airports like this that are going to find that their supply is really limited by the space they have. You'll see those prices that continue to creep up.
Thank you, Mr. Ham.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Real briefly, and I'm not going to quote you, I'm just kind of getting an idea. Project Two with expansion adds revenue. So what, how many gates are we looking at? And I probably could find it somewhere, but I'm just curious as you're here.
It'll be a net add of 5. We go from 7 gates to 12.
Okay.
Now, just as a for instance, I believe Sioux Falls is going from 10 gates to 14 or 15. We're at about the same number of passengers that Sioux Falls expanded to get to their current position. So the airport board, back as we've worked through the process, looked at a smaller gate area expansion, which would have taken us from 7 gates to 10 gates. But by the time we got it done, we had already been at capacity.
Right.
So there's, they've kind of gone through this whole accordion piece of it, trying to determine what is needed, but then also what is financially responsible. So there's been a lot of that back and forth over the last several years in studying and looking through this.
Sure. And then if I understand, Project 3 is going to expand and kind of clean up the car rental situation. Is that what I gathered?
That's correct.
So between Project 2 and 3, what do we ballpark? I know you've done a bunch of estimates, but if you had to pin it, what would be the increase in revenue that these two Project 2 and 3 add?
So, in terms,
I know.
I can tell you, we would have to do a financial
Sure.
analysis
Okay.
to be able to predict that. I mean, it comes into rents. It's going to be based on our ability to be able to fill the gates up and, have more, as our passenger things grow or our passenger numbers grow, what I can tell you is on a per passenger basis, we're making about between $13 and $16 per passenger that the airport actually makes. Not what the businesses on the airport make, but what we do. And then we've got passenger facility charges to the tune of $4.39 that we get out of it. So we can give you numbers like that, but we would have to project it against what the future employment numbers would look like.
No, that's very helpful. Thank you.
You bet.
Seeing nobody else, I'd entertain a motion to acknowledge. Motion by Ham, second by Roseland. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion passes. Motion to adjourn by Roberts, second by Pettigrew. All in favor? Any opposed? And we're adjourned.